Okay, this one's going to be pretty brief because I had actually forgotten where I'd wanted to break the lecture up. So there's just a little bit until we start looking at some of the minority languages. Okay? But this is the pattern that we were talking about. We were talking about the proto-language, the ancient language, the languages that dominate Europe descended or evolved from. So most of the languages in Europe have the same central roots. They are Indo-European languages. And I have put a resource in the infrastructure module, module A. This is a brand new resource, so if you see suggestions, if you see things that I could do to make it better, please let me know. But I have created some tables to show you how languages are organized and how we will be talking about them. And so we were talking about the oldest kind of languages, right? The proto-languages. That's here, up at the top of this table. And then the lowest level, the most recent level, is down here, the individual languages. Right? So, for example, here is an example of there's Indo-European, right? And we talk about that coming out of the Caucasus region. And then the language families, Germanic is an example of those. We just saw that. And that is a smaller area, right? The proto-language covered a huge area. A subset of that is the language family. So Germanic is an example of that. Then comes language groups, which I threw in because it does help you see the patterns. Right? West Germanic is a subsection of Germanic. And again, it is a smaller area still. And so I wanted you to see the scale, that as we get closer in time and move through more specificity, we're also talking usually about a smaller area of space. So that helps you see the spatial pattern. That's why I created this handout, to help you see these patterns. But we are really not going to talk about language groups in this class. This is not a linguistics class. It's not an anthropology class. But I wanted to mention them to help you see how the languages are organized and how you can see the patterns. And then that last level, kind of like the trees, excuse me, the leaves of the tree, those are the individual languages. So English, for example, right? That is one of the Germanic language family. Then the language group is West Germanic, and then English is the individual language. And you can move through the tree, which I also put in this handout. The proto-language, in this case Indo-European, that's like the trunk of the tree. And then the big branches, those large main branches, those are the language families, Slavic, Romance, Germanic in Europe. And then we're going to skip over the groups, but those are the subdividing branches, the smaller branches. And then the smallest levels, the leaves, those are individual languages. Okay, so there's this resource here for you. The third page in that handout is this tree. Isn't that neat? I love this diagram. It was done by an artist. I've linked the original map, which is actually the original drawing, which is actually more extensive than even this. So it's in that document in Module A, so you can examine it in more detail. We are not going to get this specific, okay? You do not need to know all of these languages, but I wanted you to see how languages are organized and how geography can help us understand that. Okay, so here's the Indo-European, that proto-language. Then we've got an early division, right? This is the branch of Indo-European that went to the east, and this is the branch that went to the west. Okay? And then we've got Germanic, Romance, and Slavic. And then we can have some more divisions within that. But then we've got these tufts of leaves which represent the individual languages. So I hope that helps you break it down and see the relationships. And if we see this pattern more clearly, and we can actually see it by mapping it. That is the power of geography. We can visualize all of this stuff that I just said. Let's see how it actually plays out on the ground. Look at this map. I'll give you a minute to figure out what's going on here. What is this a map of? Hopefully you are seeing that this is a thematic map. And specifically, the theme is language. And even more specifically, this is a map of the word for beer across Europe. Now, is this a perfect representation of that spatial pattern that we just talked about, of one group or families of languages here in the north, one in the south, and one in the east. No, it's not perfect. Right? There's always more complexity when we apply this to the real world. But overall, you can see that pattern here on this map. We've got cerveza and words that are very similar to cerveza in the south. We've got beer, or I'm not going to try to say it in all these languages, but you can see that these areas have similar words because these languages are all cousins. And then over here, we have, just like in that earlier map, the mustard color, here it's yellow again, we have a different word for beer. And it is very similar throughout all of these areas. So you can see we've got more Germanic words in this area. We have more Romance-based words in the south. And then we have the Slavic words in the east. So I hope that helps you see it. And you're looking for anomalies, right? You're looking for things that don't fit this pattern. There's some interesting variation here up in the British Isles. We have an interesting variation here. What's going on that? And then we've got an interesting variation here. The words for beer in those three places, and actually up here too, not as similar. So let's think about why that could be. And that is our topic for the next